A Spider-Man who never actually speaks, animals with spider-like abilities, and a version of the character who gets his abilities from an alien? Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It's me, Amanda, and this is the top 10 weirdest Spider-Man variants. Boy, these are some weird ones. Which version of Spider-Man do you think is beyond strange? Let us know in the comments. Number 10. Spiders-Man. If you were wondering if I misspoke there, no I did not. Spiders-Man is one of my favorite alternates out there actually because, well, he's just so creepy. He's definitely a weirdo because he is literally made out of spiders. Ugh. This version of Peter Parker, instead of being bit by a radioactive spider, actually fell into basically like a vat of experimental spiders. As a result, he was consumed by them, and his consciousness manifested within them. Although the real Peter Parker was actually dead and gone, being completely devoured, his mind lived on in the spiders who were connected by his consciousness and came together to create basically a humanoid form. This version of Spider-Man really can never reveal his secret identity, as doing so would reveal that he's actually not a person at all, but just a bunch of spiders all huddled together in the shape of a man. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love when we talk about Spider-Man content, I love talking about Spider-Man and all of the Spider-Verse stuff, be sure to check out our Spider-Man playlist. We've got a lot more content over there for you. Number 9. Web-Slinger. I love this alternate Spider-Man. While odd, I'd also say he's a pretty cool variant as well. This alternate version of Spider-Man hails from the Wild Wild West. Patrick O'Hara hails from the alternate reality of Earth 31913. He was a traveler who would show off his shooting skills in shows, giving gun presentations. Doc Morbius also traveled along with him. While Patrick would show off his shooting skills along the road, Morbius would sell his elixir. One day the elixir doused a radioactive spider, and after that spider bit Patrick, he noticed he now had spider-like abilities and powers. Tragically, Morbius began to drink his elixir, which actually turned him into a vampire, forcing the Web-Slinger to track down his once old friend and defeat him. That's what you do to vampires, especially when they're being all creepy and drinking people's blood. Number 8. Spider-Punk. Spider-Punk is a strange one, but is also another favorite of mine from the Spider-Verse. Spider-Punk seems to be one of the alternate versions of Spider-Man that we'll see appearing in Across the Spider-Verse. This version of Spider-Man is not Peter Parker, but instead Hobby Brown, or Hobbert Brown. In this reality, Hobby Brown is a punk rocker who not only possesses spider-like abilities, but also the power of rock. In fact, at one point he actually used his music skills to defeat an alternate version of Venom, cranking up the volume and using an army of amps. Now of course this Venom was very different, but still, it's a super cool story. I love it. Number 7. Superior Spider-Man. What if one of Spider-Man's greatest foes became Spider-Man himself? Well, we know what happens because this actually has happened. Actually a few times in the comics. Now, one of the most memorable and strangest occurrences of this was when Spider-Man actually traded bodies with Dr. Octopus. You know, I've short-formed that name so much in recent years that it actually feels weird to say his whole supervillain title name now, Dr. Octopus. Why does that feel so weird? Otto at the time was on his deathbed, and in an attempt to save his mind and preserve it, managed to trick Peter into swapping bodies with him. Initially, Doc Ock just wanted to use Peter's younger body to save himself, and actually had no interest in taking Peter's place. However, as Peter in Otto's body lay on now his deathbed, because they'd swapped bodies and he was in Otto's failing body, he managed to convince Otto that the world needed Spider-Man, and to take up the mantle and continue what Peter had started when he became Spider-Man years ago. Otto surprised us all by actually agreeing, vowing to act as a hero, and to even do better than Peter had, dubbing himself Superior Spider-Man, which honestly that last part, not so surprising for Otto Octavius. Although ultimately Otto wouldn't necessarily do better, he wouldn't necessarily be a better Spider-Man, some very interesting things came out of this massive storyline. And there are still some people that argue that Superior Spider-Man is better, so I mean, I guess that's for you, the reader, to decide. Number 6. Spider-Boy. What happens when you take Connor Kent's Superboy and mix him with Peter Parker's Spider-Man? You get Spider-Boy. Spider-Boy is one of those rare and amazing creations that came out of the days of Amalgam Comics. For those who are unfamiliar with Amalgam Comics, it was a magical joint comic line that existed between both DC Comics and Marvel Comics. These two publishers came together to combine their worlds, mashing up heroes and stories to give us new characters who were inspired by their roster of superheroes and supervillains from each of their unique multiverses. Spider-Boy, as such, is one of those characters. Spider-Boy was a clone who was created by Project Cadmus to be a duplicate of the Amalgam Universe's super soldier, but with the added ability to manipulate gravity. Peter Parker was the scientist who was in charge of creating this clone, but he died during the process after his project was basically sabotaged. As a result, the clone created was much younger than intended. He was named Pete after his creator by General Thaddeus Ross, who was overseeing this project. Unfortunately, Ross, who Pete came to know as his Uncle Jen, was killed by a mugger. As a result, Pete lamented his young age as this had made the mugger dismiss him and focus on Ross. Spider-Boy vowed from that day on to become undismissible, so all criminals would focus on him instead of innocent bystanders. Number 5. Spider-Man. Another one of my favorite alternate spider weirdos is Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man. Spider-Man spun out of a what-if story, which aimed to answer the question, what if Aunt May had been bitten by a radioactive spider? The question we were all, I'm sure, itching to know the answer to at the time. This first happened to May in issue number 23 of the 1977 What If series. May was basically bringing Peter his lunch, which he had forgotten at home, when she was the one who ended up being bitten by the radioactive spider in his place. In May's reality, both Peter and Ben are still alive and well and actually act as her allies, while she fights to protect New York and stop criminals in their tracks. Kinda like a cute little family team. I love it. Number 4. Japanese Spider-Man, or Spiderman, as he is also sometimes known. Japanese Spider-Man is very different from the one we know in North America. In Japan, Spider-Man actually had his own TV show, but with that he also got a radically different backstory. It's really wild and really great. If you think you know Spider-Man, you likely will be very surprised by this version of Spider-Man. Spider-Man here is Takayuya Yamashiro, who got his spider-like abilities from a dying alien. Along with these abilities, he was also given Leopardon, a giant robot mech spaceship. Yep. The alien who gave him his abilities is named Garia, and actually hails from another world known as Planet Spider. Prior to becoming the hero Spider-Man, and even after, Yamashiro was known for being a talented motocross racer. Also, the intro for the 1970s show is still one of my all-time favorite intros I've ever probably heard in the existence of television intros, and I honestly still think it slaps today. Number 3. Spider-Ham. This version of Spider-Man is actually a web-slinging cartoon pig. Spider-Ham hails from a reality that is similar to the Toontown we see in the classic film Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Physics aren't really the same as our world, but instead are reimagined to be kinda wacky like how they are in classic cartoons. I don't know about you, but to me, this has always made Spider-Ham not only seem like one of the weirdest variants around, but also kind of one of the most powerful just because of that. Because I feel like if you have toon physics, like, watch out. Spider-Ham's civilian name is Peter Porker, and he hails from the reality designated number 8311. In Spider-Ham's origin story, he actually started out as a spider, but after being bitten by a radioactive sort of rage-fueled pig named May Porker, who actually was a scientist simply trying to try out an atomic-powered hairdryer at the time, which went awry and kind of put her into a fit of rage, he was transformed into a pig. This is the true story. Despite being turned into a pig, he still kept all of his spider-like abilities and powers, hence Spider-Ham. Number 2. Widow, aka Spider Horse. Although if you look up Spider Horse on Google, you might actually get a different character before you get Widow. But editorial speaking, Spider Horse is still a name that is used with this character, so I'm still mentioning it here because I still think it's relevant, and I like saying Spider Horse. Remember when I was telling you about Web-Slinger, Patrick O'Hara, living in the Wild Wild West times? Well, he's not the only one who receives spider-like abilities. No, no, no. His horse was also bitten by the same elixir-doused radioactive spider. And guess what? He got powers too. Widow is Patrick O'Hara's loyal steed, who also became a spider-like hero and even was recruited alongside Web-Slinger to join the Web Warriors and fight against the Inheritors during the Spider-Verse event. Spider Horse is also one of the Spider-Man variants we see or will see in Across the Spider-Verse. Fun facts. At least it seems like we'll see him. He's in the trailer, so I feel like he's gonna be in there. Number 1. Spidey Super Stories. I love this one. The Electric Company actually brought us the first ever live action depiction of Spider-Man, if you can believe that, with their Spidey Super Stories skits. In these skits, Spider-Man was portrayed by puppeteer and dancer Danny Seagren. This version of Spider-Man never spoke, but instead acted out his intentions that were communicated by a narrator who told the story. Fun fact, Morgan Freeman was actually one of the actors who had narrating credits for these skits, so if you go back and listen to some of them, you might hear his very familiar voice. He was a member of the Electric Company cast, so that's why you will hear that. In these stories, Spider-Man took on villains like Dr. Fly and Spoiler. Spoiler was all about ruining things for folks, hence his name, Spoiler. He likes to spoil things. Dr. Fly, on the other hand, was a half human, half mutant who wanted to transform everyone on the planet into a mutant like he was. All of these villains were so strange and so great, and you should go back and watch some of these skits because they're pretty fantastic. That's about it. Until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.